Welcome back to the Turn on the Music podcast. This is episode 8, and we are going to be talking a little bit about Eva Cassidy again. We found some more information, and actually I found some information. I didn't tell you about this, but I found it, well, first before I... Jesus Christ.
No, keep going. This is fantastic. Guys,
No.
he's so used to talking to me that he doesn't need to introduce me anymore. Yeah. And I'm okay with that. So,
so
I'm here.
up.
CJ
Let me
is
just
here.
talk. CJ's here. Yeah. With me as always is CJ, and So we're going to talk a little bit about Eva Cassidy again, and a little bit about Chuck Brown, I think, right?
We're going to have some little information on Chuck Brown, and then we'll have some more information on Eva Cassidy, a little more history, I think.
Yeah, and I when I was talking about the episode that we did with Eva, I said something that was wrong, and I found out afterwards that I was wrong. So the concert that we were talking about, the Live at Blues Alley album, she did not know she had cancer before she did that concert. I thought she knew, but she did not.
Right.
So it happened after that. And I think you probably have more information because I know you've been digging into her a little bit more.
Well, what happened was I was digging into Chuck Brown, and there's information about him, but there was more on Eva. And not that I didn't want to speak about Chuck Brown, but I wanted to. The fact that I found more in Eva Cassidy, I thought it'd be more interesting to share more about that. And Chuck Brown kind of kept himself like on the sidelines with what he was doing, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we mentioned back when we were interviewing Nikki, I mentioned Hannah Wicklund. So we're going to talk a little bit about Hannah tonight as well. The downside to Hannah is because she is so new, there isn't a tremendous amount of information about her. So we're going to talk a little bit about her. We're going to share some more of her music. And then we'll kind of go from there and see what happens. So how was your week, sir?
My week was, we're getting to busy season at work. So my week was, by Tuesday, it was a week. Yeah. So, I the same thing's going to happen this week. And it is what it is. The next 3 months are going to be very busy for us. Not just me, everybody that I work with. It's just going to be a very busy.
Yeah, it's the end of the school year, that kind of wrap up.
Yeah, and then the with everything going and then having to prepare for the new year, and that's done at a certain time frame. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, this is my third time doing it, and I started in the pandemic, so I feel like I kind of I have a little bit of a idea of what I need to do.
Well, I mean, it might even change because the pandemic is different now, so who knows?
It'll be interesting to see how it changes.
Yeah, my friend is a teacher, and she's been remote the last 2 years, and they announced this year that there's no more remote positions. So They're going back full at this point. Right,
but each state is handling things a little bit differently and how they're going to, what they want and what they want this district stand. And some of the districts are in limbo because they don't know what is coming up or what they're looking for. So it's like, how do you prepare for what you don't know what you need?
Right. And like things around the world that keep changing. Yeah. I placed an order for headphones back in January. They were supposed to ship in March, and the week they were supposed to ship, China shut down again. So it's like, now I'm in limbo with that order. I don't know if I'm ever going to get them. Who knows?
Right. No, it's crazy. But otherwise, not it's going to be busy. It hasn't been too bad. How about yourself? How's your week?
I don't know. It's I wasn't sure I was going to share this story, but I figured, why not? I'll share it. I had kind of a mild panic attack this morning, which was
really?
I haven't had it this bad in a long, long time. And I'll be honest, part of it was one of my friends, a coworker of my friend, his grandmother died, and that kind of weighed on me a little bit. And then I slept really poorly last night. Thankfully, I made an appointment to get my sleep looked at, but they're so booked out. I don't have an appointment until August. So
that's crazy.
So it was a crazy night's sleep. I ended up sleeping on the couch. Just like I couldn't get comfortable in the bed, and I don't know. I feel more comfortable on the couch or even the floor sometimes. So, and then I was at church this morning, and I don't know what it was, but I was like, I need to go home. So I just left and went home. So
it's panic attacks.
I took a nap.
So randomly.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like I have not been doing a very good job of meditating recently, and I'm sure that weighs into it. And the fact of lack of sleep and the whole, death of my coworker's grandmother, that all just kind of rolled up into one, and I just kind of went, ooh,
Yeah.
need to take a break here. So
Well, because we
That's
put a
what I did.
lot. We put a lot at bay to get through the day and the week.
Yep.
And then it escalates to a point when something big happens. It kind of like, I was feeling the same way with certain things by like Thursday, Friday, and every hour I was taking a moment where I like shut my laptop, looked away from the screen, and I breathed for like 5 minutes because it was. I mean, I didn't have what you were dealing with in the sense of a death, through knowing, but it's still I get it. It happens. So in that case, what were you listening to this week? Were you listening to anything
I am
interesting?
still stuck on Nickel Creek. I can't turn them off. I'm gonna try this week. I want to explore their other projects. I like the Watkins Family Hour. Chris Steely's got several other group. I think it's Punch Drunk Brothers. I think is one of them.
He's impressive too. Like
he is
impressive.
unbelievable. He is an amazing mandolin player.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to start looking into those other groups. But it's funny because so when I started this job, I got stuck on barbershop, and I had the group is called the Newfangled Four, and they do an arrangement of Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I had it stuck in my head for like 6 months, and it was just like certain parts, and like that's what I have now. I have certain parts of Nickel Creek, like there's harmonies just stick in my head. And it's like, I just got to listen to it again. So that's what I've been doing. And I've been, going through some more acoustic stuff. One of my favorite acoustic covers is an Elton John song, but it's covered by a guy by the name of Miles Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And I forget the name of the group that he's in. It's gonna give me a second to think about it. But he covers Elton John's song "Leave On" with acoustic guitar.
Interesting.
And it's really, really good. And then the other one that I love that he does is I'm gonna forget. I'm gonna look it up because I'll stick it up. I'll stick. I'll play a little bit of it, because it's just talking about vocal control. He has got some amazing vocal control.
And when you're putting stuff in the show notes, you need to put in the YouTube video you sent me of Nickel Creek.
The Tiny Desk concert
playing. No. They played like
the
a wedding or whatever. And
the
Toxic.
Britney Spears Toxic. Yeah.
So we'll throw that in the show notes because
absolutely
that was a great. To play it over, you need to watch the video because the video plays a factor.
Leaves are on the ground. The fall has come. Blue skies turning gray, like my love. I tried to carry you and make you whole, but it was never.
So that just shows you a little bit of his lower end range, but later on in the song, here's a little bit more of when he takes it up in his upper register, which is unbelievable.
And when I'm gone, oh, break your fall. Oh, well, you blame. I can't go on and let you lose it all. More than I can take. Oh, ease your pain. Ease your.
So that's called "Watch Over You." The group that he sings is called Alter Bridge, and then he's done stuff. Have you ever heard Disturbed do "Sound of Silence"?
One of my favorite covers that I've heard of that song.
He comes on. There's a couple of videos where he comes on and sings the upper part of "Sound of Silence." Oh, wow!
Yeah, it's
so
some of these voices that are out there are just impressive, and I will talk more about the social media aspect when we get into Hannah Wicklund because I think that plays a huge factor. But anybody else, anything different, or just
No, that's just those. What about you?
So I was listening to Chuck Brown, but I Chuck Brown did a lot of standards. He did a lot of the standards.
Yeah.
He's very into the standards, which is very cool because
And so did Eva Cassidy.
Right,
and that's a lot of what she did.
But he was the godfather of go-go, which I thought was hysterical because I'm expecting more like funk and go-go music, and he does some great standards. Like his stuff is great. But I've been listening a lot to Modest Yahoo, who if I don't know if you've ever listened to him, but one of his albums that he does, Light, I think is fantastic, and there's a song on there called One Day that I think is brilliant, which I could play that. And then I've been listening to MC Yogi. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No.
But he has a few albums out. I'm a fan of his. I was introduced to him by an ex-girlfriend. We just, we were talking about music. We were talking about all that stuff, and she recommended, let me listen to MC Yogi. And the album she introduced me to was it was called Elephant Power. So it's a lot of plays on I'm Hindu, like that type of stuff. Like, it's very, very pretty, but very like upbeat music stuff. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But he has an album out that I think has some really great songs on it called Only Love Is Real. And actually the title song on there, I think is a fantastic song too. So actually, let me do this. I'm going to play, let me share my audio with you. And I'm going to play, I'm stopping your screen share. Deal with it.
I forgot I was sharing.
No, it's okay. Just let you know. And
I was actually just thinking, did I share with that whole time when I was playing Miles Kennedy?
Yeah.
All right, good. So you did hear it.
Sorry, no, I heard it good. So I'm going to play, a little bit of One Day, but I'm a fan. And here we go.
Sometimes I lay under the moon. I thank God I'm breathing. And I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around because
I think that this album is so great. This song is fantastic. I think it's very poignant to this time period with everything that's going on in the world. And I never would have listened to him before, but my brother brought him up. He does a lot of reggae, and he's getting more into alternative. But a little side story, my music teacher back in high school, who unfortunately passed a few years ago, his son got Modest Yahoo started. He was one of the producers.
Really?
I had no idea. And I was talking.
Is that Larry Sobel?
Yeah. Sorry. Larry Sobel, right?
I do know Larry.
So one of his sons helped with with some of his first few albums. And we were sitting at dinner at one of these things, and I was talking to him about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, my son is." I was like, "Are you serious?" So it was just. So then I just started listening to him, and I heard him live once because he played at some festival that my brother's band was playing at. So I happened to hear him live and stuff. So I really, I get into it, and something completely off of what I normally listen to, but I was introduced to it and I loved it. I'm gonna also play "Only Love Is Real," the title track from the MC Yogi song. He's like he's a DJ, but he's an MC and he's a singer, so it's kind of a mixture of everything. But I'm gonna play a little bit of that too.
Only love is real. I crush everything else, basing in the mission free.
Only through direct knowledge can the mind be polished. Some things in this life said you just can't learn in college. Spiritualism above materialism. Every time I breathe and receive the miracle given. Listen, everything is not what it seems. Clean the screen and you'll see a solid dream. Light shimmers on the surface, which makes it all seem like we're separate. But look a little deeper, we're connected. Check it. Look a little deeper, we're connected. Check it. Look a little deeper, we're connected.
When I feel lost and disconnected.
He's the second voice that comes in on that, but I just, that first album, the Elephant Power that I was introduced to, and it kind of led into everything else that he does. And on this album, he collaborates with a few artists, some well-known artists and stuff like that. So just a different change of pace from Nickel Creek. But yeah, no, that's kind of what I've been sitting on. I've been
Nice.
bouncing between those two, but the whole it needed something a little more upbeat, but also something that had some really cool, words behind it.
Yeah. And that last one reminded me of another one that I listened to a little bit this week. Yoshi Horikawa.
The name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
I think that this guy this album in particular is used for like testing speakers and headphones and stuff.
Okay.
That's kind of how I found it. I was going through Reddit and looking through some guy who built this new little sound system, and he used this album to test out his new setup. So the cool thing is he uses what sounds like organic sounds and then like puts melodies behind them. So like there's one where like he's like walking through a forest and like there's like the birds chirping, but he like samples the chirping so he gets a rhythm out of it, and then he weaves melodies into it. So it's kind of neat to hear like how it's kind of like we were talking about like how music is everywhere, know, and he kind of does that. It's really, really kind of cool.
That's very cool.
So
That's
I think
cool.
I was gonna think about playing it, but I think maybe I'll pull a whole episode and maybe we can link it to like the Victor Wooten book. I think it's
that would be
goes hand in
cool.
hand.
Yeah, I've introduced a couple of people to the book recently. With MC Yogi, he actually does a song with Modest Yahoo. I forgot to mention. That's what I wanted to say. The Heaven is Here. And to your bringing up the gentleman Yoshi, I don't know if I shared this with you, and I'm doing a little research on it. I want to connect with the gentleman, see if he'll reach out. There's a gentleman to follow on Instagram who uses plants to make music. So what he does, he clips these I don't know what he's clipping onto them, but he's clipping he clips them with a wire that goes into a board, and it's like a whole board that he wires everything out, and he starts creating samples and beats based upon what they're doing organically, their vibration and all that stuff. And he has albums out of it's called Plant Music. And I want to reach out to him. I'm curious if he would be interested in chatting, because he's I don't know if he's in a different country, but I think someone even put him up to possibly get nominated for a Grammy, and he denied it. Like he was that humbled. Like he was like, thank you guys for thinking I should do this, but I don't feel that that's where I should be, and blah, 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 whatever he said. So it's just very interesting, going to your point where we said music is everywhere, and how Yoshi, would go through the wall for a walk, whereas he's actually attaching himself to plants. So it's very interesting how it is everywhere. Yeah. In the midst of me talking, I see you've been taking some swigs of bottles. What are the bottles you bought from that store?
Yep. This is the cream soda version. This is vanilla caramel.
That sounds delicious, actually.
Yes. It has real creme brulee flavor.
Yeah, guys, he hasn't sent me a care package yet of any of this stuff, so just let you know how our relationship really is.
Well, when you come out here, we're going to go to Jungle Gyms, and we're going to go to get...
Yeah, but that means I got to wait like a year before I can get out there. I'm hoping I can do it sooner, but... All right, we'll see.
Make me a list, and I will get you whatever you want.
So, we'll have all that stuff in the show notes. If you are Modest Yahoo fans, you'll know the album. I hope you look into his other stuff, and MC Yogi I think is great, and I want to check out some of the stuff that you were mentioning, Kyle, with and I want to dive deeper into Nickel Creek myself after some of the stuff you sent me this week. Cool. So I don't have anything to drink. I don't have anything special, so I don't have anything to share on that end.
That's a bummer.
I know it is a bummer.
All right. Well, let's get into your stuff that you were researching this week.
Yes. So a lot of the stuff that I have is basically going to be me reading off of some of the articles and stuff, but I think it's easier to just read the words that have been already written than to try to rewrite them into my wording. That even a good
That's
sentence.
That's a lot of words.
Yeah, it's a lot of words. There's more if you scroll down. The whole other end. But I may be able to skip through it as I'm reading, but I took out the stuff that I didn't feel we needed. Like I kind of said. So just a little background on Chuck Brown, and this is actually straight off of his website. So it's right off the bio. I just took out some parts that I thought would be important to see. So as we said, that he was the godfather of go-go. Chuck Brown is the undisputed soul founder and creator of go-go music, a hypnotically danceable genre deeply rooted in funk and soul that he developed in the early 70s. And the only form of expressive culture to originate in the District of Columbia, which is very cool. It comes out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, which is what I was going to mention. Just a reminder for everyone. That's where Ava's from as well. That's where most of her stuff was. So they're all in the same little area.
Yeah. That's what's so interesting about what came about over here. And you're going to see there's something written in his bio. Like, so this is foreshadowing rap and many of the major popular R&B styles of the past 3 decades. Chuck's signature style earned him a place in American musical royalty. This esteem was maintained by the reputation of his legendary live shows and his live recordings. He's good live, like from what I heard. Like, yeah, it would be cool to to see that. But, and because they state that he's very big on getting the audience participating and getting to call and response, so his shows can go on forever because he gets the audience in it.
Yeah, and that's very typical of R&B and soul and funk and stuff. That's very typical. So
yeah. While searching for a sound to call his own in the 1960s, Chuck was deeply inspired by artists like James Brown. He latched onto the Latin percussion groove from the band he played with at the time, Los Latinos. Combining this with his roots, his love of blues, jazz, gospel, soul, and African rhythms, Chuck began to develop his own unique sound. Starting out playing top 40, Brown would break it down between songs with percussion and audience call and response and keep the music going and the dance floor packed. So I was like, all right, that's cool. That's a really cool thing to kind of give a little background to Chuck Brown. Then I read a little further in his bio. After a string of live recordings, he met at the time an undiscovered shy talent by the name of Eva Cassidy in the early 90s. This is right in his bio, which I think was impressive.
Yeah.
His lifelong dream of singing with a lady, springing from his love of duets by the likes of Louis Armstrong with Ella Fitzgerald and Billy Eckstine with Sarah Vaughan, came to fruition with the critically acclaimed and worldwide release of The Other Side, which we did play some samples of on the episode with Eva, by Chuck Brown and Eva Cassidy, which contained the original recording of the worldwide Eva Cassidy hit Over the Rainbow. He dedicated a jazz standards album to Miss Cassidy after a tragic loss to cancer. What I thought was impressive is that his connection to her was so strong that it was strong enough to put it in his own bio. Like, he talks about influences, but he's talking about an artist that inspired him. So I needed to find a little bit more information. I wanted to find out how they actually kind of met and all that stuff.
And
so
I just want to point out, just to give you guys a little more information, Chuck Brown was born in 1936.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know when he passed.
I think
is he still alive?
So I didn't look, funny. I should have looked at that, right?
I'm looking right now.
Look at that. I was more impressed by some of the information I found about
2012 he died.
Yeah, he passed in 2012. So like I said, it would have been cool to have known this back in that day when I was going to concerts and he was still performing. But but so this led me into trying to find more about his meeting with Eva Cassidy. And I found an article from 1998, March 8th, 1998, entitled When Chuck Met Eva. And it's a Washington Post article by Jefferson Morley. I don't know many articles about this gentleman. I don't know what he writes. I don't know if he is a musician or if he wrote specifically about music. But the way he wrote the article was a very short story meeting. It was embellished. There was a lot of information. So I kind of took out the points that I thought were very interesting. So they talk about how Chuck Brown and Chris Biondo was in the studio late at night. So that was some of that who was a producer. He did the recordings with him. Biondo turned around to Chuck and he said this. He said, "Is the best thing I've ever heard." And he's holding up an audio cassette tape.
What is that?
Yes. So for the listeners that are not aware, a cassette tape played music and you had to put it into a machine and you had to rewind it, fast forward it. It was hard to skip songs. And if you're really into cassette tapes, you used to record songs off the radio onto them.
Yep.
Well, at least I did.
I actually started my recording career using audio cassettes.
Yep. And I still
was
have
Type 1, Type 2, and Type 4. Type 4 had more headroom, so you could have it louder, and you can convert it down to Type 1 and Type 2 because they were cheaper. Yeah.
I know there are musicians out there and audio engineers out there, or people that may be listening that know about recording, have heard of cassette tapes. But for those of you who have not, that is what I grew up on, and I'm not afraid to admit that. And they were fantastic.
And I'll tell you this: like when CDs came, there were these awful little adapters that would go from your CD player into your tape deck, and there was a wire that would stick out. And it connect to your CD player, and that's how you listen to CDs in your car before we had CD players in the car.
Yes. You can still get them. You can still get them. So, he says he did not mention. Oh, no, that's the side thing. Yeah, sure. Chuck answered, but he was willing to indulge his new friend. Like, he didn't believe him. Like, he didn't believe it was the best thing to say. So it moves on to say that he puts the tape in the deck and he says, her name's Eva Cassidy. And Chuck goes, is she any good? And he goes, just listen. And he pushed the play button. And it goes on where it says, from the massive speakers in the corners of the studio, a clear and brilliant voice started to flow. They call it a stormy Monday. By Tuesdays, just as bad. That sentence didn't make any sense to me, but I think what they're talking about is the lyric. Song. That's
they call it Story Monday, but Tuesday just as bad.
I didn't know when I read it. I read it so quickly the first time. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I went back. I was like, oh, that's the lyric. Duh. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No, it took me a moment to realize that. I was more impressed that I got information about this. So the song right out of the blues canon was the kind of number that bar bands do all the time. It was being sung with great power and knowing restraint by a singer who found her way straight to its emotional core, which I thought was interesting that this was a thing that they said, because you said she didn't move much on stage. So that's what I thought was interesting. And it says the two men sipped as they were drinking, of course, as the tape rolled on to another song. When my soul is in the lost and found, you came along to claim it. Aretha Franklin had recorded the definitive version of You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman a quarter century earlier. And so they go on, they talk about more of the songs that they had, different, like God Bless the Child, Bridge Over Troubled Water, a folk tune called You Take My Breath Away. And it just kind of took Chuck back. Like, he was just kind of like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And back to songs that he heard on the radio in the wintry mornings when he was getting ready to work at Fairmont Heights Elementary School, Baby It's Cold Outside. Like, stuff like that. He spent his career as a self-described noisemaker, revving up crowds of kids for all night parties, but he'd always longed to sing that kind of music, sophisticated, nuanced, adult. He also never told anyone for the fear they'd laugh out loud. But when Chuck heard Eva Cassidy that night in 1991, he started thinking maybe he could sing those songs with her. So,
and the album came out in 93.
Yeah,
with the two of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that caused us. So that guy Biondo was like, that was kind of his idea, was to kind of get them together, but he didn't expect it to happen.
Right.
And then, like, after on, like, Chuck was asking him to rewind the tape because he wanted to hear it. So moving forward, it talks more about Eva. It says, Eva Cassidy had the effect on more than a few people. She had a voice that could silence a bar room and get the pool players to lay down their cues. A voice, I lost my page, a voice that could invest all kinds of American popular music with true portion of herself. Pop singer Roberta Flack called her a master of her craft. Rock drummer Mick Fleetwood longed to record with her. Jazz singer Shirley Horn simply said, what a voice. She also had a manner that drew people to her, blunt, insecure, innocent, and edgy in the same interesting places. She lived and sang in ways that dispelled the obsessions, race, politics, careerism, that pervade the place where she was born. She was indifferent to conventions of notion of achievement. She didn't open a checking account until she was in her late 20s. She had several close female friends, but her mother was the closest. For all the insight she brought to the Torch songs, intimate relationships with men gave her lit fits. She craved long walks, bike rides, sleepy towns, and junk food. So she's just this hometown girl. Mm-hmm. On perceived matters of principle, she would not compromise. Her talents, she was insecure to a debilitating degree, which you mentioned that she was very insecure about herself. She was a blonde of Irish and German heritage, more than one music professional. So I thought this sentence was interesting, and that's why I wanted to bring this up. More than one music professional, Chuck Brown included, assumed from hearing her tape that she was black, based upon her voice.
Wow.
For all its evocative power, her singing was technically perfect. She had to be taught how to snap her fingers on stage, which is very interesting.
Like I was saying, her stage presence was not
she had to be taught. Yeah.
Yep.
She was a feminist with a particular loathing for sexual exploitation of women. She was for a while dependent on the men who produced, managed, and collaborated with her. Performing scarred her, singing sustained her.
Scared her.
Probably scarred.
Yeah, probably a little bit both.
No, probably a little bit both. Thank you. I was reading too quickly. Thank you. I appreciate you checking that.
Yep.
Just moving on, it talks about how at 9 years old she could draw. So she was she was a sketcher and a painter, which to the other side of this. And she could sing folk and jazz standards that her father taught her. Her favorite album was Buffy St. Marie's I'm Gonna Be a Country Girl Again, right? And then The Tall Trees in Georgia, that song she sang for her parents on that album.
Yep.
And Eva would put the needle down in the groove and go off in her own world. This I'm trying to skip through some of the stuff. Then her father gave her an island string harmony guitar and taught her to play. She caught on quickly. And then her father assembled a family band at one point. Eva played guitar and sang. Her brother Danny played the fiddle, and Hugh played the bass. So her father played the bass.
He played a fish.
He played a fish. I can't read. Wow. So Eva and Danny performed at weddings and at the Wild World, the old amusement park near Bowie. One time, Eva dropped her microphone and rolled off the stage as she burst into tears. So, stage performing was tough for her. Like it said, it scared her. So the last paragraph is that I kind of grabbed from this. We're going to link the article. If you're interested to read the article is very interesting. It was just too much to read. But this part right here is what I thought was very interesting. About a week later, Chuck returned to mix some vocal tracks. He parked his white Lincoln in the driveway and was heading in when a woman came out of the studio, stopped him. "Hi," she said. "I'm Eva." "Excuse me," Chuck said, not quite understanding. "I'm Eva Cassidy. Chris played my tape for you. You're Chuck Brown. I've heard so much about you." Chuck stared at her, trying to connect the name and the voice. "Wait a minute," he said. "Come with me." He took her back into the studio looking for Biondo. I'm hoping I'm saying his last name right. I think it is Biondo. "Chris," he called out. "This young lady just told me." Biondo was trying not to smile. The lady singing on the tape. "This is the same person?" Biondo acknowledged that it was. Chuck turned to Ava and extended his hand. "I'm so glad to meet you." Soon Chuck and Ava were coming to the studio every week to record. He was drawn by her craftsmanship, her sly sense of humor, her lack of pretension, and most of all, by the sense of possibility that she'd lit in him. As for Ava, she had found a fellow singer who wanted to do the classic American songs she loved and who might actually meet the impossibly high standards to which she held herself. That the singer had already won some renown didn't hurt either. So he was already known. Just, the fact that someone like Chuck wanted to sing with her was great for her self-esteem, Biondo said. She thought he was a singer of the caliber. She thought he was a singer of the caliber of Ray Charles. And Ava was real big on Ray Charles for both of them. The studio was a refuge. So, which to me is huge because I'm a huge Ray Charles fan. I love him. He's I listened to when I was a kid. When I was before I was 10, I had tapes and CDs and whatever I could have was his. Mm-hmm. But that whole thing is just amazing how they connected after he heard her. Mm-hmm. And then if a lot of his albums are standards, a lot of the more popular ones are standards.
Right.
Now, I'm sure back in the day they weren't. But just the idea of sharing a voice, saying, "Hey, I got somebody for you. This is what I want." And it's just so sad because they did this album, and then she did one other, and then she passed. Yep. Right? She did one other album after, right? I think it was.
Well, I mean, there are a couple others that were... I don't know, collections of her stuff, right. But yeah.
That was the thing that I thought was weird, was that it was it's a lot of studio recordings from what I read. Yeah. They're studio recordings that I guess were never edited or whatever, and they just try to get them out. But they make it, a lot of them are UK-based labels.
Yes. I don't know why, but I mean, if you remember, one of the Eva Cassidy albums is available on DVD in the
Right.
UK,
Right.
and they posted that video on YouTube for the folks here in the States.
Right.
So
I just had to share that information. I'm not going to go further into Chuck Brown's history. I think because he's the Godfather, Go-Go, and all that stuff. He's already made his name. I don't need to try to read stuff and mess up the reading again about him. But I just felt finding this, I thought was just very interesting to share how two complete, like, if it wasn't for that guy, Chris Biondo, they would have never met. Mm-hmm. We never would have gotten that album with them, which is a fantastic CD. I think that the album that they did together is fantastic. So
yeah.
That's all I got on it. So anything you have to share, please do. If not, let's move on to Hannah Wicklund. Or Wicklund. Is it Wicklund?
I don't know.
Because it's Lund.
It is Lund.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So Wicklund.
Wicklund. So yeah. So Hannah, I found. So as most of you know, I use Rune, which is my audio system in my house. So it works kind of like almost like Sonos in a way where you can have like remote speakers throughout your whole house. You can link them up, play all the same thing on one speaker, or on all, play the same song on all of your speakers throughout the house. But there are forums, and some of them are, nerdy forums. How do you set up this? How do you do speaker placement? How do you do all this? But one of the ones that I follow quite regularly is every month they do a What We're Listening To Now. So people just post screenshots of what they're listening to. I usually just scroll through them during the day and just to kind of get ideas of what other people are listening to. And the cool thing about it is there's so much that's there. I mean, it's everything from, like, there was a guy who's into like harpsichord music, and he posts like the latest harpsichord releases, and I'm like, wow, like who knew that there were like harpsichord releases still? But
why wouldn't there be?
Because harpsichords are hard to find.
I'm just joking. But that's really interesting though.
And then it's everything from that to like death metal to everything, hip hop, and so I just kind of go, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but I go, how does the album cover look? And if it looks interesting, I'll look into it. So I found Hannah Wicklund that way, and the album that I first found was a live studio album. It's kind of a live. It was a web broadcast show, and this is on Spotify. It's on Qobuz. So you can find it, and I played a little bit of it for you guys back when Chris was here. When Nikki was here. Wow, now we're
no, it's fine. Who's that?
So it was Audio Tree was the recording. It was a live, webcast of that show, and they put it out as an album. And her band is called the Stepping Stones. So it's Hannah Wicklund and the Stepping Stones. So you can find her both ways. Sometimes if you search just her name, all of her stuff comes up. But there isn't a lot of stuff out there because she is, let me do my math correctly. She is about 26.
I think she's 26, yes.
But she's been a band leader since she was 9 years old. She started that young leading a band, which is crazy to me. But yeah, I mean,
the way she plays, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So this is, I found an article back from 2018. In 2018, that would have made her what, 19? Right. So it says that she has played over 2,000 shows.
That's nuts.
At 19.
Now, you only found her through this Rune.
Yes.
I'm assuming that she's picked up more because of social media.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to get into that right now, but
Yep.
I was curious.
Yeah, we'll get to the social media stuff and how she hates it.
What?
But
I'm sorry?
she doesn't really like it. She hates social media. In fact,
okay.
There's a song about it, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah, you cut out for some reason.
Oh, good old Zoom. Yep. So yeah. So she is just, so I told this story. I remember, I don't remember what year this was. It had to have been, so I was at the hardware store. I started at the hardware store in 98. It was probably early 2000s. Me and my buddy Charlie went to the Riverhead Blues Festival. And that's when I heard Joe Bonamassa for the first time.
Right, and he was in his 20s,
late 20s, I think.
Yeah,
you know, and nobody knows who he was.
Yeah, right.
And we just stood there. We were like, whoa, this dude is amazing. You know, and that show cost me $12, I think, and I got to see like a whole bunch of other art, you know, groups. And now, like, he came to Cincinnati last year, and like tickets were $85 to start. You know, and he's sold out the Vienna Opera House. He's sold out Carnegie Hall. I think Hannah is on the same wavelength as him.
Wow. Well, you know what? I could totally see that.
Yeah.
I got other vibes from her, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
Like when you're done talking.
Yeah. I mean, I think that just the feel alone that she has at her age, you know, it's, you know, things like B.B. King said it about Joe too. He's like, you know, yes, he can play all those flashy runs, but he knows how to take like 3 or 4 notes and make you feel those 3 or 4 notes.
Right.
And that's what B.B. King was all about. And I think Hannah's the same way, you know, because I always look at, you know, guitarists, because, you know, there are so many guitarists out there, and I don't want to say there are a dime a dozen, but there are so many out there. It takes a lot to, I mean, just like a saxophonist, it takes a lot to impress me. And there's a lot of ways you can hide on a guitar. You know, you just turn up your distortion, and you've got,
right.
You know, kind of like on the piano, you hit that sustain pedal, and you can cover a lot of mistakes with that sustain pedal.
Right.
So I was like, all right, the first thing I usually do when I find a good guitarist that I like, I went, all right, I want to see something acoustic from you, because you can't hide behind an acoustic guitar.
Sure.
And I did, and she did during the pandemic for bands in town. She did a full 30-minute session of her just doing acoustic stuff. There's nothing else. It's just her and a guitar, and she does all of her stuff. And what's interesting is this goes back to Joe Bonamassa for me. Like, when I first heard him, he was all about, you know, electric stuff, and it was all very distortion driven, and, you know, flashy this and flashy that. And then he kind of got older, and then started to experiment like with the same songs and coming out with like acoustic versions. Like Mountain Time was one of the big ones that I heard. You know, he did, you know, the first version of Mountain Time is all electric. And then all of a sudden he took this acoustic version, and I saw him going back to, we were talking about the Paramount, where back before it was the Paramount,
right,
it was the IMAC Theater. I saw Joe, he did Mountain Time acoustic for the very first time that I heard it, and it was slowed down. It was like a quarter of the speed, and it was just the way he changed that song to make it acoustic. Like, you could still play it fast, but like the way it translated, it's just such a well-written song that it translates so well in so many different ways. It's almost like Bach, you know, like if you can play Bach on harpsichord or organ or this, and like Bela playing on the banjo, like,
yeah, exactly.
That's when you know something is well-written, when it can kind of transcend the instrument. It can kind of go, you know, beyond. And I think Hannah's stuff does that. She doesn't write all of her stuff alone. She's co-writes a lot of the stuff with other band members and other songwriters. But yeah, getting into the social media stuff, she wrote a song called Shadow Boxes and Porcelain Faces.
It's a great song, by the way.
It's a great song.
Yes.
Let's play a little bit of it. I played it for you and Nikki.
No, please play it again.
Yeah, where's Spotify? Am I sharing my sound? I don't think I am.
No, you may have to. If it's not working, let me know, because I know
it's working. All right, so let's play a little bit of Shadow Boxes and Porcelain Faces. Actually, you know what? Yeah, let's play it from here.
Tell me a story, one that I haven't heard. If I'm gonna know you, you need to know yourself first. And don't rehearse what you're gonna say, 'cause we're all fucked up a little,
Clearly, I didn't pick the non-explicit version. Sorry about that.
No.
But yeah, so I mean, how often do you hear? So this was, let me see, I think she was 23 when she did this album. So how often do you hear a 23-year-old say that social media is bad?
Right, and that's
You
that's what threw me off about this whole thing with her, because I went to go find her on social media just out of curiosity. Like it was more of just an understanding of where she came from, whatever. And there wasn't much.
Yeah.
Like she's doesn't post that often, which I'm totally fine with. Like she doesn't have to be posted every day. But I'm assuming, based upon how you found her, that social media has helped her some way get out there, because she's been out there.
Right.
But we didn't know she was out there.
Right. And like this came from Audio Tree, which kind of like hooks up, artists and then just does like live web shows for them. Kind of like, it's almost like a Twitch concert kind of a thing.
Right.
But I mean, she in that actual show, she was talking about how she likes being off the grid. It's just one of the best times of her life was she went to Cuba, and her phone didn't work, so she had no contact to anyone. It was one of the best experiences of her life, was getting out of the phone, because it's such a time suck for us, and unfortunately, what a lot of people don't understand is how these apps are designed to keep you sucked into the device.
Right.
And coming back to this podcast, I went back to Facebook just because I have a lot of people who don't follow me on Instagram, who don't follow me on Twitter. And so I opened up my Facebook account, which has been deactivated for, I don't know, how long have you been deactivated from Facebook?
At least 2 or 3 years.
Oh, it's been longer than that. Because
Yeah.
I think I'm close to 4 now, and you did it first.
No.
I'm
No,
pretty sure.
2018.
Well, that's 4 years.
Is it 4 years?
It's 2022 now, so.
Oh my God, it's 2022.
So,
Yes,
yeah,
you're right.
I'm-
No, you're right.
I'm
It's been
probably
4 years. Yeah.
3 years maybe, because I
But
did
like
it shortly after you.
but I completely deactivated
right.
it.
So
Like
I-
my
so I
stuff is
have-
all like my stuff, quote unquote, is all gone.
Right. I kept I talked to a few people through Messenger still. I got a friend in London who just moved there, and like that's the only way we communicate. So, but yeah, I mean, I opened it up, and just like I was popping on before we did this just to see how many people like saw the post about the podcast, and before I know it, 45 minutes was gone, and I was like, what happened?
see. So anybody who's on Facebook who's listening to us, feel free to share amongst your friends on Facebook.
Yes.
I like to stick with Instagram and Twitter, but I think that that allows. It's weird because of the fact of social media, but I like the even though they're becoming more complicated, I do like the simplicity of just like, oh, it's a video, it's a film, done. Like there's nothing more to it. Though the way it's growing, because it is a Facebook-owned program, Instagram, it's starting to get a different feel to it. Though it's still not Facebook. It's still not that social networking aspect that's there. But my vibe from her, and I was listening to her live album, listened to her studio album. Totally have a Janis Joplin vibe.
Absolutely.
Joplin vibe. And it's
and
brilliant.
that's one of the people she looks up to.
I was going to ask you if you had that information, because I was
Yeah.
curious. Like even her look, she's got long curly hair, and just like some of these pictures that you see her on stage, and it was just, and some of the way she sings, like she doesn't have that raspy Janis Joplin voice, but you could tell she's channeling that in some of her songs or most of her songs, and that was what got me. I'm a huge Janis Joplin fan. She may, a lot of people, it was like indifferent, but she was a good singer. Another one, who's gone too soon, who was gone too soon. So, well, I can't read, I can't speak today. It's just, it's really, hope this doesn't mean that Monday is going to be a Monday,
Yep. Yeah. So this came from the Masquerade. Just on the 10-track album, Wicklund taps into the fury, loneliness, ghost. She resurrects specters of Hendrix and Joplin in the Looking Glass. her song Looking Glass, as well as Power Ballad Intensity. So yeah, so Joplin's in there, Hendrix is in there. It's just like she's
she's a very she's. Go ahead. I'm going to reword that.
I was going to say she's just such a good player and such a good singer. You know, I mean, you're just going back to, you know, the Shadow Boxes and Porcelain Faces. Like the opening of that is so controlled. You know, it shows. You know, she's got pipes. You know, I mean, let me play a little bit of. Here's this is called Bomb Through the Breeze. Same show, but just to give you an idea. Sorry, I thought she was going to sing at the beginning.
Listen, that was just hearing her play.
Yeah,
She plays so dirty. It's so good.
Yep.
Like, oh man, what I was gonna say was that she's such a young talent, and that and when you were talking about John Bonamassa, oh my gosh, I really can't speak. Joe Bonamassa.
I give you the power to speak.
I talking about him, about how he started so young and where he's come from starting where he was like 20 years ago. I can only imagine where she's going to be 20 years from now.
Right.
You know, like, I still hope I'm standing 5 feet 8 inches tall over the ground so I can listen to her play.
Yeah.
But, you know, but her talent is so raw at this age, and she's just going to get better.
Yep.
That's the whole thing. She's just going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And she's going to get more brilliant. And she's going to be before. It's one of those things where, like, you know, when the artist turns a certain age, whether it's 50 or 60, they change a little bit of what they're doing. You know, it's on a rare, there's a rare occasion that you have artists that just keep rocking out until they can rock out no more. But there are some artists that get to a certain point. They're like, you know, I want to do something a little different.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to hit that before she hits 50. She's going to hit that like at 35 or 40. She's going to be doing things that you're going to be like, what? Like, really? How old are you? You know?
Yep. And I think one of the things that, like, just looking back on, you know, I think the only exception to this one is Amber Rubarth, but like looking at the people that we focused on so far, like what they all have in common is that they started at a young age and they were fostered by their family to have this sort of thing. And I mean, I didn't want to get to this, you know, in this episode, but you know, it leads me to think like what are schools doing without music programs? Because like that's one of the first things that they cut, you know, in school programs. It's like, you know, what are we doing to our music because of all those cuts that go on? And you know, because there are parents that are out there like with the except like my dad was an accordion player in a polka band before I was born. I never actually heard him play, but like without that, you know, my mom just saying, I want him to learn the piano. Like, where would I be if I didn't have that?
Right. And it's one of those things where like it's for those kids that gravitate to that feeling. And, you know, it's really funny. Like my son, he's 5 years old, and I randomly, I'll play musicians up on Apple Music just to see what he grooves to, what he gets into. He's loving Michael Jackson, which I think is hysterical. And I think it's great at the same time because I'm a huge fan of Michael Jackson. I always have been a huge fan of his music, you know, despite whatever he's ever dealt with. Just as a musician, I think I like his stuff. So he'll ask to play, and I'm just sitting here going, and he'll try to dance to it and do whatever. And I you know, if I I'm not a sports person. I'm not saying I won't introduce him to sports, but the thing is like, I'm heavily into music. I'm going to play music in front of him. And that's where his influence comes. If he gets older and he's like, hey, listen, I want to play football, I want to play soccer, I want to play baseball, whatever, that's cool. But to your point, like, you know, that's how he's learning from that. And you're right. If there's no program in place in the schools, and that's the tough part, especially in this day and age with the way that we're going digital with everything. Is I was just talking to somebody and they mentioned that their son is looking to be a music teacher. The father's an art teacher, and they're like, you know, talking to him about it. And I said, just to let you know, there's a lot of new companies out there that are working on digital distance learning programs for music lessons and stuff, you know, where the kids can still learn and have that interactivity with each other and all that stuff. And because even in music, they need to find a way to, because what if something happens like this again, or you need to have remote, or they start offering remote, whatever the case may be, you don't want to deny anybody anything. But yes, it's sad that the arts are the first thing that go when it comes to budgets. And this is not a hit on sports. This is nothing against sports. Not at all. It's just, you know, it's just sad that happens. Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, my sister she plays a lot of Irish music, and she works for an Irish music school, and she does a lot of her teaching remotely because like how many people in Cincinnati want to learn how to play the bodhrán?
Right.
You know, how many people in Cincinnati know what that is?
Right. Exactly.
You know, a lot of people don't.
Exactly. It's amazing. And please, you know, as you listen to this, if you have any feedback or anything you want to share about music education, please do. You know, there was one year where my hometown, they have a huge music department, and there was one year where there was a potential to lose the music program, right? But because it was so big, it was one of the first times I've ever seen a school not push aside the sports program, but do whatever they could to save the music program as hard as they did, and have the sports teams, because the coaches were so ingrained with the music teachers, they knew each other so long, having those two work together to make sure that the music program didn't go anywhere. And that's what it's all about. That's what I'm talking about. Like, that's what you can do. Like, if you have all that working together, it can work. Because if the program went, they would have lost the marching band, and they would have lost the pep band. They would have lost all that stuff. Yep. You know, and that's the thing. Like, I remember being in the marching band. I remember the program starting because we didn't have one when I went in. You know, and then getting to college and starting our pep band with the teacher in college, and then singing the Star Spangled Banner and getting smacked in the butt by the coach for doing such a good job. No, it was the guy was awesome. The coach was awesome, and it was really funny. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it was just, I wouldn't have worked so hard with the music teacher at the college to help the pep band if I didn't have the experience in high school to help get that running. You know what I'm saying? And it's so no, it's a good thing. And you, where did she foster from? Like, was she introduced? She was 9 years old. So 9 years old puts you, like fourth, fifth. Yeah. So most schools do fourth or fifth grade where they introduce kids to music. You choose so she chose guitar, or her parents told her, hey, try guitar, or something gravitated to her, because you're normally picking a woodwind or a string instrument, not a string instrument like guitar normally. Usually an orchestral instrument. And, you know, unless you're influenced to play piano by a family member, or you played it in school, whatever the case may be. So it's like recorders. A lot of people play recorders and they lead into playing flute or clarinet because of just that likeness of that instruments, you know? Yeah. And even with guitars, they didn't introduce guitars until middle school for me. I wish they would have introduced it sooner.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it now. Same with me. Middle school was in the first time we had a class that we could take either guitar or piano in middle school.
Right. So. It's yeah, no, this could be a discussion that can go on forever, and you can say whatever you want to say, but unfortunately, there's also all those politics in the back end that we don't have control over, and
Right.
We just need to be supportive of what is there to keep it going.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But so back to Hannah real quick though. I introduced her to one of my colleagues, and I said, you need to listen to her. I said, are you a Janis Joplin fan? And she said, I haven't listened to her any of her stuff, but I love her. I'm like, then you're gonna love her music. And yeah, I haven't spoken to her yet about it. I don't know if she's listened to it. I'm gonna see her in the next couple of days back at work, and I'm hoping she had an opportunity to listen to it, because her husband does a podcast, music oriented, but a little bit more a different type of format. And we should have a battle of podcasts with him. He's got a great sense of humor. Oh my God, that'd be so much fun. I bring that up just because he's interviewing he interviews a little bit of everything. He does a focus on music, but he has like actors come in and all that stuff. Like, so a lot of the stuff that he's brought up, I'm like, oh, we just talked about, it's funny. So he brought up, he was interviewing somebody, and it was a bandmate. My brother mentioned them. There was a duo. I don't know if they're still performing, but they were called Bangladeshi. The drummer that my brother plays with, and the bass guitarist who's deaf. They call themselves Bangladeshi, and they played like this hardcore, like metal-esque music. And I think they're phenomenal because there's only two of them. And he was interviewing the bass guitarist. And I'm like, I messaged him like, I know the guy. How do you know this guy? It's just small world in music, because if you really think about it, it is a small world. But Hannah is just, I cannot wait for her to put out more music.
Yeah, and I'm excited now that things seem to be opening up, pandemic wise. I know she's going to be doing a lot more touring now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put her website in the description. It's got links to all of her, all of her tour dates and stuff. The way these people are going to get bigger is if we go out and support them.
Yeah,
So-
support them, stream their music. That's another way to do it,
Yep.
The more, it's funny. I had this conversation with my mom, and she goes, as you know, in the past month or so, when we were talking about, we spoke to my brother a few episodes back, and he said that he released the cover of Grease that he did. And, like a week or so after, my mom goes, did you buy a song? Did you buy a song? And I said, no, I stream it. She goes, what do you mean? I mean, she knows what I mean. It was just a funny conversation. But I said that if you stream his song, or you stream the songs that he plays, he'll get more money out of it.
Right.
Because you're not buying just the song, you're streaming it. So every time it streams, even though it might be a small percentage, he still gets something out of it. And I forget what group did this, but there was a group on Spotify that at the time that Spotify was kind of building things, they were upset with how they were getting paid or whatever. So I don't know the whole logistic end of it. So they put out an album specifically for Spotify, and they had their fans stream it. And it was one of those things where they just had them stream it constantly. Like, it was one of those things where, like, play it when you go to bed and just let it play all night long. And it kind of like beeped off everything. It got their stuff, But yeah, stream it.
Yeah.
Streaming music is a big deal. Like, so you may not be a streamer, but this is another way to get those artists more recognized. The more we play their music, the more we listen to them, it helps them.
And from personal experience, don't try to explain Spotify to your mother. I'm still trying to explain that one too.
That's great. That's too funny. Do you have more to add? Because I want to bring up two musicians.
Go for it.
We don't have a lot. I don't have a lot on information on them, but I think I want to do some research on them a little bit more.
Sure.
And it's funny. So whose line is it anyway? I'm hoping that some of you out there know the show or have seen the show, whether it was back in the 80s when it was from the UK, or back when Drew Carey did it, or even the more recent iteration of it where Aisha Taylor was hosting it, and Wayne Brady, Ryan Stiles, and Colin Mockery with a more common, they're always there because they produce it. There are two musicians that have been in the circuit since the Drew Carey version, when Drew Carey started.
Linda Taylor and
Laura Hall and Lyndon Taylor.
Close
yeah,
enough.
No, you're right. So these two female musicians, and I I don't mean to say female musicians, and the reason why I say this is because unfortunately female musicians sometimes do not get the recognition that they deserve.
I was going to say that with Hannah too. I was going to say like if she were, a male, she would be skyrocketing much more like Joe did.
Yeah, her name probably would be
Because
out there a little bit more than hers is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hate to say that, and we focused a lot on, and we didn't talk about this either. We focused a lot on the female musicians because the original plan was to release this back in March for Women's Appreciation Month. That's why we focused on female artists.
And then we just
never mentioned that, but
we were falling in love with them, and we kept looking for more. And
we just and honestly, like I just kept finding them. Like once it's kind of a Pandora's box. Once I opened the little door, we just kept finding more.
Right, and they are ridiculously talented because of the fact that the way the show goes. If you've ever watched the show, when they do anything musically, because Wayne Brady is a talented singer and musician himself, a talented singer and dancer himself. They'll play genre to genre to genre to genre. Like I can't even say the word enough times to just and they. I think it's Linda Taylor plays the guitar, the banjo, the mandolin. She's got all the instruments out there. She plays bass. Laura Hall is strictly on piano and keyboard, but even her talent is crazy. And she actually has a group that I have to do some research on it, where she teaches music, and I think in this way, like where you can like improvise in this manner. Linda Taylor has a huge background too, but you just would never have known it. So I think I'm going to try to see if there's any information on them, but I wanted to bring them up. So if you ever watch the show, listen to them more closely and think about how they jump from hip hop to R&B to Broadway to classical to hard rock to heavy metal to German metal to like anything. It's just the fact that they jump around the way they jump around is just impressive. And I love the fact that in the other iteration with Aisha Taylor, whether they stopped it or not, I don't know, they acknowledge them far more than they did in the past. And that I think is brilliant too, is that they are like, we wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't for the two of them, so just had to share that a little, because I've been watching Whose Line a lot lately because it's on HBO Max. Not sponsored by HBO Max, but HBO Max, if you hear us, we would happily accept.
Absolutely.
Free HBO Max would be fine with me.
Sure.
I spoke a lot poorly, and I read a lot poorly. It was one of those nights, but it was great. And you forgot I was here, so that's okay too. You didn't introduce me at the beginning.
That's true.
I was just devastated the whole entire time. I decided to just not be able to read or speak. We are gonna have an interview for the next episode. We're gonna get back into that.
Yep.
Do we know who it is yet? Or are we still on the fence?
So as long as you're still open to the agreed upon time, my coworker Nick is going to come and talk a little bit about music.
And we'll learn more about him. I don't want to ask any questions.
Yeah, he's a wonderful storyteller. So
that's fantastic.
I always joke around. We used to have lunch and learns every Friday at 12:00, and I always joke that we need to have story time with Nick because every day he's got some story and they're all hysterical. And he knows how to tell a story.
Is it going to be a long episode?
It might be like a 4-part episode with him.
I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah,
we'll bring him back and we'll just make him talk.
And he is a wealth of knowledge musically. He's into he's a little bit of drums, bass back when he was in high school, but he's very much into like the punk ska scene.
Nice.
And he has a meticulously curated MP3 collection where he goes out and buys the CDs, converts them to MP3 lossless, and like he goes out and finds like these really rare like punk covers.
That's
and
cool.
Like, so he was telling me about this one like 10-disc set that he found that took him like years to find. So So he does that, and he has been literally all over the world. So he knows a lot about like, metal music from like Russia and
I can't wait.
So he's a linguist too. So he knows Farsi and Arabic and a whole bunch of other languages.
Amazing.
So he's going to be real interesting to talk to.
We may have to do a few episodes just to talk about the different things.
Yeah.
I hope we have some music queued up that he can talk about.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we have everything
make
queued
like a
up
little
for it.
playlist of some of this
Oh,
stuff.
absolutely.
That's fantastic. I look forward to it. Will he be joining you in your location, or will he doing
He will be joining me here, and I'll be making him dinner, and I hope.
Oh, that's so
hopefully.
sweet.
I know.
That's really nice.
I figured like because he's we work together, so he'll probably just
are you
follow
gonna
me
pair it
home
with a
and
nice wine?
He's a big root beer guy, so I have a couple different kinds of root beer.
So you're gonna pair a root beer?
I'll pair it with a nice root beer.
That's fantastic. I'm gonna have to find a root beer
because
now.
I don't drink. I have no idea what to pair with my food. I have no idea. You want a Coke or a water? Like that's a choice in my ass. So
that's awesome. I look forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
And then I think after that episode, oh wow,
that's the Rachel episode, isn't it? The Rachel.
I think we're bringing Rachel back. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, cool. We'll talk more about that at the next episode. We'll
I can finally share my opinions on Dave Matthews.
And
notice I have not complained, so I'm saving yet another complaint
that's good.
For that episode.
You're cashing them in. You haven't cashed them in yet. You're holding them in.
Yep, holding them in.
Has she been listening to saxophonists?
Honestly, I don't think so. She to tell a little story. She, if you follow her on YouTube, you'll see that she actually just got a brand new banjo. So she learned banjo from Jim Pankey, who is a YouTube banjoer. And she didn't know, when you're new to the instrument, you don't really know what to look for in an instrument. So they kind of worked together, and she said, "Listen, can I send you a banjo?" He actually recommended the banjo and said, "Hey, can I send it to you? Check it out. If you think it's worth it, great. I'll buy it." So she sent it to him, drove down to his house, and they jammed for like 3 days on the banjo. She put a couple videos up about it, and then drove it back home. So she's been like in banjo heaven since.
That's awesome.
Since she came back.
So we need to then just bring up some saxophonists. Actually, that artist that we found, the young lady, we should bring that up or have her listen to it ahead of time. Yep. And then I want her to learn the song on the banjo. I've got a brand new pair of roller skates.
Okay.
I want her to learn that because that popped into my head when you said she got a brand new banjo. Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, me too.
Especially if Kyle remembers who I am next week when next episode when we record.
Jeff, right?
Jeff. That's what the J stands for in CJ. No, it doesn't. Awesome. You got the closing.
I do have the closing, but you are having such a good time reading it.
Oh wow!
You're gonna read it.
Oh, okay, good, excellent. What are we going out on? Do we have a song we're gonna go out
on? I'm gonna throw I'm gonna throw some acoustic Hannah Wicklund at you. So either Ohio or I don't know.
Okay,
Probably
so just continue listening after I do the closing, so you can hear what Kyle chose. All right. Thank you for listening to Turn On the Music, the podcast. We hope that you join us next week. Follow us on Twitter at Turn On the Music and on Instagram at Turn On the Music Podcast. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend. And if you really want to help promote the show, head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. Kyle, you have a great evening.
Well read, sir.
Thank you very much. I can't wait till next week or next episode or whatever we recorded.
Have a good one.
You too.
Tin sodas and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear them calling for dead in Ohio. Gotta get down to it, soldiers are gunning us down. I should have been done long ago. What if you knew and found her dead on the ground? How could you run when sodas and